to dig a little deeper into the homes program, which has some real promise for deep retrofits in multifamily, is Keith Welks, who is helping PHFA to design their homes, the home energy performance based whole house rebates program. And while many programs offer a lot of opportunity for affordable housing, this is perhaps the most direct full cost program. And it's just been a pleasure to work with you, Keith. And thank you so much for being here and take it away to give us some insight, deeper dive into this program.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. First, let me express my appreciation for Housing Alliance putting this together, for Liz and her work in hosting it, being the sort of maestro of the slides in the last 24 hours. I know all the speakers are very grateful for your help as well, Liz. As Liz said, I think we're going to have a bit of a change of pace here. The first several presentations that you've heard already, going all the way back to Dr. Regley's, we're at a pretty high level. We're going to change the level of magnification. I guess you might say we're going to go from a period where the discussion was a mile wide and hopefully get to one that's now, I hope, a bit more than an inch deep. And as Liz said, I'm going to talk about one of the two IRA rebate programs that you just heard about. It's the Home Efficiency Rebates Program. In my experience, this program is already unique and already having had a legal name change within the first year of its existence. It used to be called the HOMES Program, a name that actually didn't quite reflect any acronym that DOE could ever come up with. They've now moved to something a little cleaner, Home Efficiency Rebates, or HER. Some really basic background to get us started. As you know, this program and the HERE program that was just discussed were created by the IRA in 2022. The program runs for 10 years through 2032. You heard that the two rebates that we're discussing are in total going to provide Pennsylvania with $260 million. It's split almost perfectly equally. I call it $130 million for each during the 10-year time period. Now, you might think that means that we're looking at $13 million a year. In fact, we're already looking at more than that, because by the time this program gets started, it will most likely be 2025 before any funding goes out the door. So we're looking at 7.5, 8 years program. So we're already up to more than $17 million a year just in the HER program for rebates. It could even be more than $17 million a year. One of the eccentricities about this program is that DOE has encouraged states to roll the money out as quickly as they can. So if Pennsylvania is successful in exceeding $17 million in placement in a year, it can immediately apply for funds from the next cycle. So if not literally, figuratively, the sky's the limit in terms of how much of this money we can access and how quickly. DEP, which is administering it initially, on behalf of the Commonwealth through its Energy Programs Office, is only too aware of this opportunity and is pushing as hard as it can to move quickly. The money in each of the two programs, the HERE program and the HOMES program, is segregated with up to 20% available for administrative and sort of support costs, but 80% must go to actual rebates. And finally, and just to be clear, this is a situation where we have two different programs, HERE and HOMES, and effectively are split over two kind of sectors, single family homes and multifamily homes. And each of those is eligible for funding in each of the two programs. So basically have, a 2x2 or 4 kind of program grid to look at. As it may turn out, the multifamily sector, as we all know, is not it's not one complexion. There are projects with hundreds of units in them, and there are locations that have 5 or 10 or 15 or 20. So single family, multifamily with an asterisk. Next slide, please. So PHFA and DEP are incredibly interested in the opportunity set for the multifamily area. We know that multifamily provides an extraordinarily high percentage of the affordable housing stock in Pennsylvania. We also know that while there have been lots of programs historically dedicated to providing resources for LMI individuals in the housing space, most of them have been dedicated to single family. So there's enormous interest in taking advantage of the IRA HER rebates for multifamily purposes. And in fact, while you may know or you may hear that there's a relatively modest minimum amount of the money that must be dedicated to the affordable housing LMI sector, at least at this time, DEP and PHFA are looking to utilize virtually all of the HER money for multifamily deployments. So that's very exciting and reflects a degree of commitment and recognition that I know PHFA is incredibly thrilled to see. Just some of the details that are useful to know. Eligibility for a particular building to qualify for a HER rebate is determined at the building level. That is to say, sort of an aggregate picture of the building confers eligibility or makes it very difficult to move forward. And that sort of composite picture is at least 50% of the available units must be occupied by households with less than 80% of AMI. If you meet that, every unit in the building is eligible for rebates. PHFA already has an existing role or relationship with more than 2,000 multifamily affordable locations. So the sort of opportunity universe is enormous. All of those buildings or locations that are in the PHFA portfolios are what are called categorically eligible. That means the 50/80 requirement is largely automatically applied. That's a key factor here. It indicates that there will not need to be sort of manual determination or description of eligibility, but mere presence on the PHFA portfolio and compliance period time still available will qualify a building to at least seek a rebate. It is possible to demonstrate eligibility at the building level manually, that is to say, outside the PHFA categorical eligibility. We think that's going to be very difficult and time consuming. And frankly, it may represent sort of a bridge too far for a lot of multifamily developers or owners or operators. Interestingly enough, if you have a building that qualifies and meets the 50/80 rule, you can in fact secure rebates for improvements that are done at every unit, not just those that are occupied by LMI individuals. And already mentioned that we recognize that the multifamily sector is not monolithic, and we may have, different colors for different kinds of multifamily settings. Next slide, please.
I do have a question, Keith, that I think is relevant here. There's a question from Shannon. Is multifamily including intergenerational housing or boarding homes as we're talking about multifamily considerations?
Again, I'd like to go with the already well-worn, I'm not sure response. I don't know that PHFA itself has buildings that fall into that category, either of those categories, although I'm happy to check that and get back to Shannon. If it doesn't, the first thing I would say is you'd be dealing with a manual eligibility determination, which will be challenging because of the level of information, privacy concerns, difficulty in getting the information, consent of tenants for that information to be deployed for any purposes, et cetera. So I don't want to be too pessimistic, but it may be a challenge.
Thanks,
But
Keith.
certainly
And
worth pursuing. I'll try to remember to do that.
yeah, that's great. And I'll just note there is another multifamily efficiency programming that will be started through DCED's weatherization assistance program that maybe is less complicated than some of the complications you just mentioned for this one. But pass it back to you. Thanks.
Great. So let's move to the next slide, please. Some things that I know often come up, so to sort of address them really quickly, let me take the lower part of the slide first. Tenants will not be prejudiced in any way by IRA rebates. The IRA program itself imposes a number of constraints on landlords or owners to protect tenants from sort of negative consequences of their living conditions, the quality of life, and perhaps their operational budgets being improved. And I noted them there. I don't read them, but I will just also add that Again, the likelihood is that most of the properties that move through this program, at least in the opening years, will be PHFA related properties. They will already be subjected, the owners will be subjected to, and the tenants will be protected by a variety of sort of conventional, traditional tenant protection measures, including the ones you see here and various others. So I don't think there should be much cause for skepticism or anxiety that IRA projects might sort of rebound in a way that you didn't anticipate. Finally, I think it's worth noting that one of the challenges in implementing this program and persuading building owners and operators to participate is that interests may not necessarily always align in the way you think. In particular, the question of whether multi-metered buildings or master metered buildings will operate the same way, I think is an open one. I think that there are clear incentives for owners who have multi-metered buildings to go through this, obviously, but even in a master metered building, I think there are benefits that it will accrue to owners that will make it more likely that they will do it. The benefits will also accrue to owners for split metered buildings, although it's not as clear there, and I think there's some work to be done with messaging. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the thumbnail, because you don't really know what we're talking about yet. The HER reward rebates are substantial, and they're obviously designed to encourage energy efficiency measures or retrofits in residential units, often called sort of preservation activity. The two programs are not all that close. They're not siblings at all, as you see. My sort of characteristically lame attempt at humor. They're more like second cousins, or even less close proximity. I say that because they really work very, very differently. Get through this really quickly, but the HERE program is really your traditional single appliance electrification program. It's sort of a go to your Home Depot and pick up a unit, have a contractor install it, you install it as a DIY, and get a rebate check back. The HER program is not that. It is based on the development of sort of very sophisticated assessments of present energy usage and the sort of energy environment in a building, and then a diagnosis and set of recommendations for a series of measures, ECMs are often called, that are designed to work together to sort of synergistically produce greater benefits from the whole than the individuals would contribute if they were just pursued alone. And I sort of think of the first program here, which is by name an electrification program, as really sort of a participation award. If you put the appliance in, you get the benefit. This program, the HER program, is a lot more rigorous than that. Just doing the work doesn't necessarily get you the benefit. There are two ways to demonstrate that you are entitled to the benefit. I'll go through them very quickly. The methodologies are the measured one and the modeled one, excuse me. The measured one is exactly as it sounds. It involves taking a complex history of of a particular building's usage, and then beating that, improving upon that with the work you do. And if you don't improve upon it, you don't get a rebate. The modeled method requires use of certain BPI and other formulas and standards to do, again, rigorous calculations as to how much energy savings should be realized. And once the modeling is approved, the rebates are essentially guaranteed, if you will, so long as there's a certification that the work was actually done. So it pushes it into more like the single appliance, except for this incredibly heavy overlay of rigor in terms of modeling out what's expected to occur. Let's go to the next slide, please, because I know we're going to run short on time. So this is what I was talking about. I will really try to summarize this slide to a great degree. The BPI standards are listed there. Programs must employ QA/QC measures to document that, particularly in modeled instances, that the modeling is producing projects that actually deliver the results that are expected. I would note that the the advantages and disadvantages of the two methods are pretty distinct. From our perspective, at this point, the inclination is for the program to move forward with modeling receiving heavy emphasis. It is a much safer approach. It will get more money out the door much more quickly, and it will actually keep program costs down and costs to participants down in a way that the measured approach will not. Obviously, we can talk about this more in the breakout room. Next slide, please. We've already seen a slide that talked about this. In the interest of time, I'll just note that the rebates are significant. And the important point here is that the level of rebate that you receive is commensurate to a large extent to the degree of savings you deliver. All right. You have to reach a certain threshold or you get nothing. If you achieve that threshold but don't get to the highest level, you get the first level of funding you see there, that sort of third bullet. If you get above 35% in your project, you can get up to 80% of cost and up to $8,000 per residential unit. Important footnote, and Dr. Regley mentioned this, we can talk about it a lot more. It's clear that no matter how generous these rebates are, they're not 100% of the project. And so that means there will be a gap, and that gap will need to be made up by some source of funding. And that's a critical part of the role that PHFA anticipates playing. That's one of its strengths, one of the reasons that PHFA and DEP have partnered together to try and sort of architect a program that addresses as many obstacles that might prevent this program from being successful as we can. I think next and last slide, we did want big smiles from Liz. The words last slides, big smiles. So I do want to say that DEP and PHFA have been working closely together for the better part of a year now. It's been a very intensive process with meetings and discussions several times a week. We've already utilized one consultant for some landscape delivery, decoding the IRA, helping us keep track of DOE guidance documents. We are pretty far along in charting out a set of roles and relationships and are already working on an interagency agreement. Over the next several months, we expect that an RFP for the HER program will be released. Let me just drop a footnote. Our RFP for the HERE program has already been released. It's been out for about a week and a half now. And DEP is moving forward with that program. Again, it's a simpler program to arrange and therefore, I think quite properly the first one to get out the door. But we hope to sort of catch up in the next couple of months. And lastly, and perhaps of significant interest, is that community engagement is a big part of what we're doing. We've already had more than a dozen meetings with stakeholders and potentially interested participants, and we'll have many more. In fact, I think at this point, we're considering trying to have one even as the RFP is being finalized so that folks in this sector will understand exactly how we're approaching this, what our sort of process roadmap looks like, and know what to expect. Let me wrap up.